Over the years, we have made a few changes to this event. And now, for the second year, we have event sponsors. And because of their generosity, 100% of the proceeds from this event will subsidize counseling services for the adults who qualify. If you ask about what about the kids, we have a separate fund that you can make donations for too in our website. That's my side. Soon you will hear from our presenting sponsor, Community First Credit Union, when they introduce our keynote speaker. Community First Credit Union is joined by Teracare, Coventage Credit Union, Coldwell Banker, the Real Estate Group, Thunderland, and Whiskey Arrow. By supporting this event, these sponsors are all affirming the importance of mental health. Thank you also for the fun treasures in our goodie bags. We are going to continue with our program because we know that your time is very valuable. So please feel free to continue eating, right? As the food is served in a minute. The salad was delicious already, so once again, thank you, Sue and the Grand Meridian staff for this wonderful meal, and thank you for Whiskey Arrow for the delicious chocolate chip cookies that I know everybody's looking at, and I heard people saying, can I eat it already? I already had the salad, right? So now we are going to move on with our program, and I invite Amanda Secor to the podium to introduce our keynote speaker. Amanda is and I didn't complete here. What's your role, Amanda?
Chief of Staff.
Wonderful. Amanda is the Chief of Staff for Community First Credit Union. And it's on you now.
Thank you, Rosangela. Well, thanks for everybody for being here today. Community First Credit Union, we believe very strongly in the health of our communities, and that includes mental health, particularly with the changes that we've seen over the last number of years. And as a community, we can come together and we can help make a difference. And so we appreciate all of you being here with us today. We're a credit union, and that means that we're built on the philosophy of people helping people. And I don't think anything could be more true than the work of Samaritan. It truly is the concept of people helping people to make sure that we can help them find a better road, a better path, and a brighter future. So we have a lot in common. And we always like to recognize, we have a long-term board member who served on the Community First Board for many years, and he was also a very good friend of Samaritan, and that is Dave Peppercorn. And we keep him in our hearts every day. So I have the honor of introducing the real chief, who is much more interesting than me. Chief Polly Olson has been a member of the Appleton Police Department for 22 years. In her time, she served in numerous capacities, including assistant chief. She was promoted to chief of police on January 3rd of 2023 and is proud to be the first female chief of the city of Appleton. Chief Olson has always had a passion for working to bring awareness to issues surrounding mental health and was selected as the NAMI Fox Valley Officer of the Year in 2010. In 2012, she worked with John Walschlager to develop one of the first county-wide peer support programs. She served as coordinator for the Outagamie County Peer Support Program for several years, and in 2017, she was presented at the Destination Zero Officer Wellness Conference in Orlando, inspiring other police departments to establish their own peer support programs. Please join me in welcoming Chief Polly Olson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm just going to test this out first to make sure that this is working. Fantastic. Well, I want to begin with a thank you to Samaritan for giving me the opportunity to be here with all of you today. I've spent a large part of my career championing initiatives which involve increasing help and support for those suffering from or dealing with mental illness. It's truly a pleasure to be surrounded by a people like all of you who share a similar interest and a similar passion for helping others. I'm excited to share with you some strategies and some partnerships and collaborations we have put in place, to hopefully make a positive impact in our community and effectively and safely handle calls for service involving people experiencing a mental health crisis. Mental health is an important aspect of overall health and well-being, and it affects people of all ages, genders, and backgrounds. According to the National Alliance on Mental Health, approximately 1 in 5 adults in the United States experiences mental illness each year. And approximately 1 in 6 youth, aged 6 to 17, experiences a mental health disorder each year. In Wisconsin, the prevalence of mental illness is similar to the national average, with an estimated 564,000 adults, or 1 in 5, experiencing a mental health disorder in any given year. The COVID-19 pandemic has also had a significant impact on mental health, with increased rates of stress, anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges reported across the country. So we're going to talk about some of the calls for service that we've had in Appleton PD. This slide represents their documented mental health calls for service that were dispatched to. There's a caveat to this, is that we expect our officers to make a notation in the screen that it's a mental health related call, and they're not always great about doing that on top of all the other things we ask them to do. So it's my estimation that this number is actually probably underrepresented in terms of really truly the number of calls that we handle. As you can see, though, there's a significant increase in the number of calls from 2019 through 2021, and then we see a little bit of a decrease in 2022, which I think is likely due to the success of our embedded clinical social worker, which I'm going to talk about shortly. This slide is information that we got directly from actually Outagamie County and their Corporation Counsel, who does the court proceedings related to Chapter 51 detentions. And again, I just want to draw attention to the steady increase that we saw from 2019 through 2021, and then the decrease that we experienced in 2022. And again, that's going to be attributed to our co-responder pilot program that I'm going to be talking about here shortly. But before we dive into that, I want to talk a little bit about the history of CIT for those of you that aren't familiar with what crisis intervention team training is. So the intersection of mental health and law enforcement has become an increasingly important topic in recent years. Law enforcement officers often find themselves responding to calls involving individuals with mental health issues, and their interactions with these individuals can have significant consequences for both the individual and for the officer. There are several challenges that law enforcement officers face when responding to mental health related calls. And one of the biggest challenges is identifying when an individual is experiencing a mental health crisis. As many symptoms of mental health can be mistaken for criminal behavior. This can lead to situations where individuals are arrested or treated as if they're dangerous when what they really need is medical or mental health care. In addition to the challenges of identification, law enforcement officers may also lack the training and resources necessary to effectively respond to mental health related calls. This can lead to situations where officers use force to subdue or control individuals with mental illness, when de-escalation or other non-violent strategies actually would be much more appropriate. To address these challenges, many communities have developed crisis intervention teams, or we refer to them as CITs, or other specialized programs that provide law enforcement officers with training and support in responding to mental health related calls. These programs typically involve collaboration between law enforcement agencies, mental health providers, and other stakeholders, and can help to improve outcomes for both the individuals with mental illness and for the law enforcement officers. The Appleton Police Department began their implementation of CIT in June of 2004. So that's almost 20 years of practicing crisis intervention team training. Many of you probably know retired Sergeant John Walschlager, and John was really instrumental in bringing CIT to our community. The CIT approach is a community effort in joining both the police and the community together for reaching common goals of safety, understanding, and service to the mentally ill and to their families. CIT is recognized by Wisconsin's Department of Health Services, the International Association Chiefs of Police, the National Sheriff's Association, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and other organizations. Really is a best practice for crisis intervention. CIT officers are patrol officers who volunteer to receive this special training in working with persons with mental illness. In addition to handling their regular patrol duties, these officers are called upon to respond to crisis calls that place officers face-to-face with complex issues relating to mental illness. The specialized training the CIT officers receive is under the instructional supervision of mental health experts and providers, family advocates, consumer groups, and our experienced Appleton PD crisis intervention trained officers. Because of the training, CIT officers can, with confidence, offer a more humane and calm approach to the crisis and hopefully help find a resolution. I'm proud to share that I received my CIT training in early 2007. I can tell you I immediately recognized the value of the training in both my work and in my personal life. It gave me a much deeper understanding of the issues facing consumers and their loved ones and some strategies for best assisting them. Keep in mind, though, CIT is more than just training. It's also about doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. CIT recognizes a special population that deserves special care, treatment, and service. CIT officers help identify persons in need of community services, assists at getting them connected to those resources, and works at help keeping them connected. These CIT officers play a key role in reducing the likelihood of physical confrontations and enhance the opportunity for much better mental health care. So these are overall the benefits of CIT for our community. We see much more reduced risk of injuries, certainly to consumers, the public, and to our officers. We have a reduction in repeat contacts with our mental health consumers, and many times that's due to the relationships that our CIT officers develop with consumers. You see a reduction in criminalization of those persons with mental illness that come in contact with the criminal justice system because they're getting connected with the correct resources. We have an enhanced working relationship with our mental health care providers and in the community. We have increased involvement of our families and friends of the mental health consumers because many times these calls involve us as officers reaching out to family members and getting that support system in place for them. We see a reduction in civil commitments through diversion to safe and much less restrictive settings. And of course, a reduction, and this is certainly not the most important thing, but it is a significant thing. You see a reduction in the costs of overall services because we have much better utilization of those services, and a diversion is a much less costly option. So we have CIT, so I guess you're probably asking at this point, then what's the issue? Why do you need something more or something different? Well, we've seen our calls to law enforcement for mental health issues. We know that they're increasing. In fact, the statistics show that we've had an increase of about 53% over the last few years in calls for service that are mental health related. So even though we have CIT, we need something more. These calls that we handle, they're not issues of law and order, and quite frankly, the people involved in them oftentimes end up getting re-traumatized. And so we need to look for strategies that we can continue to try to minimize this as much as possible. So we ask ourselves sometimes, if somebody calls 911 for a heart attack, we're not the only ones that are dispatched to that call as police officers, right? You want ambulance, you want EMS, you want to go to the hospital, you want to have other things happening along with that call in addition to police. So then why are we not doing the same thing with mental health calls? Why are the police the only entity getting dispatched to those calls to handle those crises? Mental health crises are often exacerbated, obviously, by the presence of law enforcement. Just having the uniform on can be a trigger for many people that are in crisis. It oftentimes leaves them thinking they did something wrong, and it ends up resulting in escalation that leads to higher levels of care. So we need to find ways to try to reduce that. The number of emergency detentions are increasing, and in fact, we projected that they were going to double from 2019. And last, and again, certainly again not least, the crisis for this caller in that moment is not solved, and many times leads to repeated crisis. So we think of law enforcement showing up there, especially for a non-CIT trained officer, somebody putting a Band-Aid on it, but we know that the bleeding is going to start again, and we're going to get sent again, and that crisis is just going to continue. So let's talk about what an ideal system response would look like. As proud as we are, certainly of our implementation of CIT, we know that in Appleton and in this community, we did not want to stop there. As I mentioned, we have an increase in calls for service, especially through the COVID-19 pandemic, and a recognition that we can do better, which led us to bring together a multidisciplinary team of experts who are part of the current mental health suicide crisis response system. This group came together to formulate the ideal system response to mental health suicide crisis. The ideal system response was created with these guiding principles. We want compassionate care, least restrictive settings, living well and safely, equity, competent, skilled support, and zero suicide safe care. Under the guidance of these principles, the team developed a tiered response model for mental health calls to 911, which included embedding a clinical therapist within the Appleton Police Department. This put the right professional in the right place at the right time. This step also allowed our community to explore the concept of non-law enforcement teams like first responders that exist in much larger communities, such as Eugene, Oregon. I'm excited to share the data from the first full year of our pilot project. Our embedded clinical therapist is employed by the Outagamie County Mental Health Division, which allows this clinician to access any prior crisis mental health contacts. She can aid in de-escalation, assessment, and follow-up. She is also part of our community resource team, who's jointly supervised by the Outagamie County and Lieutenant Cash, who's actually with me today, from the Appleton Police Department. So this is what our crisis response team looks like, or as we like to call it, our CCRT, and it's comprised of the following members. So we have Sarah P., who is our licensed clinician, who again is an Outagamie County employee, but she actually has an office space within the Appleton Police Department. And then we have Officer Grier Welch, who is our BHO, who is a behavioral health officer. That is a position, I don't know if anybody here knows Nacho. I think everybody seems to know Nacho. But that was a position that was initially created when Nacho actually kind of had the idea and pushed it forward within our police department. After he left, we needed to refill the position, and so Dylan Grier Welch took over from him in January of this year. And then we have 10 patrol CIT officers. We actually have more CIT officers, but we have about 10 that are regularly committed to taking Sarah, our clinician, with them on calls for service, and she rides along with them in their squad as they either patrol or, again, respond to specific health, mental health related calls. So our goals, like we kind of mentioned, I mentioned earlier, but it's really about putting the right person in the right place at the right time and, quite frankly, having the right professional there. So some of the goals that we had through this program were to reduce the number of emergency detentions, increase the number of diversions in safety plans, so again, trying to look at trying to place people in the least restrictive settings. We want to connect those in crisis directly to the mental health system of care, or facilitate communication with an already established provider. And of course, let data kind of drive some of our decision making as we navigated through this process. And I know when I talked with Sarah recently, and we talked about, some of the keys to success in this program, and one of the things that she mentioned to me, which I really think is the key, is that she gets to be involved at the very beginning of a call for service instead of at the very end of the call for service, which is the current model that most municipalities operate under. Usually when we get dispatched as law enforcement to a mental health related call, the officers get there, they secure this or stabilize the scene if they need to, and they spend a lot of time talking with the individual or with the family or friends to try to determine what the issue is, and then determine at that point if that person is an imminent threat to themselves or others, at which point then they might be having to call a crisis worker to get involved. In this system, we have our crisis worker involved at the very beginning of the call. So she's many times present on scene, or she can be present by phone. And we're skipping the step where they have to have all this interaction with law enforcement because she's having the interaction with the support of law enforcement there. So let's talk about how we're doing with this in place. And overall, I know this slide looks pretty busy, so I just want to kind of draw your attention to all the different colors are actually different outcomes for the mental health related calls. So whether they would be return to more restrictive setting, or unfortunately sometimes jail, emergency detentions. Sometimes what Sarah's role is she might just be providing information to them about resources that are available to them in the community. Sometimes they can go into the hospital, but on a voluntary basis. So overall, during the month of September and December, we had no Chapter 51 detentions at all because Sarah was able to divert all of those calls for service that she had contact with. But overall, you see just a reduction in our emergency detentions, which again was one of the goals that we had when we put this program in place. This is another slide depicting that. Again, 0 detentions during the month of September and December, an overall reduction in the detentions that Sarah's doing as an involved clinician here. This is all of the detentions, though, that are across Outagamie County. So even outside of Appleton, obviously these detentions are still happening. So our pilot is focused specifically on what's happening within the city of Appleton. So one of the other things I just want to make a note of is that in the city of Appleton, they're going down significantly, and yet if you look at the total number of detentions per month in the blue, they're kind of somewhat stable. But I think it's important to note that if we didn't have Sarah P. in her position as a clinician embedded, that those numbers would be going straight upward, that we would see a marked increase in the number of detentions across the county. So the other thing to note is the amount of time that we spend on these detentions. So for us, from the law enforcement perspective, that was something that we watched very closely because staffing is just always an issue with us and the number of officers we have working for us and the calls for service we handle. And we spend hours upon hours along with consumer and mental health professionals in the hospital setting, in an emergency room, while consumers are being assessed and found placement in whatever secure facility it is that they need to go to. So one of the things from a policing perspective that we wanted to try to gauge is how we can somehow reduce the amount of time that we have 2 officers on calls for service such as these. So obviously the more important thing from a human perspective is how consumers are being treated, but some of the other things you can't discount the importance of either, and that's the toll that these calls for service take on the mental health and the emergency room system, because obviously if they're there seeking care, people coming in for other urgent matters are not getting the staff and attention they need. So it's important to look at overall, why is diversion important? And most importantly, it's important for the consumer. Just the experience of having to go sit in an emergency room with 2 officers present while you need to talk about whatever mental health crisis that you're experiencing at that time, and then be placed into handcuffs, be transported to a secure facility, and then against your will be kept at that facility for whatever length of time the court determines you need to be there for. So those are the reasons why having this embedded clinical social worker was so important to us, because we wanted to reduce that impact across the board. And we've done that significantly. If you look at the time in the orange, that's basically, those are calls for service that our embedded clinician was not involved with. The blue are calls for service she was involved with. And you can see that on average, the amount of time spent on these calls is significantly less when we have a clinician involved in it from the very beginning. Many times she can, if she does have to place somebody on a mental hold, she can do a lot of the work ahead of time before they get to the emergency room to avoid having long hours upon hours time spent in emergency rooms. So it's been a huge benefit. So just to wrap up, I could actually probably talk about this all day long, which is to some degree why I had this somewhat scripted, because again, this is something that I feel a lot of passion for, and you guys I know have some pretty strict time parameters for the luncheon today, so if you would have given me all afternoon, we would have had a lot to talk about. But you know, the work that we do as law enforcement officers would certainly not be possible without the support and availability of all of these mental health centers like Samaritan Counseling Center. I mean, just a really key partner in the work that we do, because again, as law enforcement, we're putting a lot of Band-Aids on things, but without the support and follow-up care in the community, the work that we would do wouldn't be nearly as effective as it is. These centers are critical for providing quality care and mental health services to members, all members of our community. The Samaritan Counseling Center offers a range of counseling services, including individual therapy, couples and family therapy, group therapy, and spiritual direction. Their licensed therapists and counselors provide a safe and confidential space for clients to explore their concerns and develop strategies for coping with stress, anxiety, depression, grief, and other mental health challenges. And the best part of the center, in my opinion, is that it operates as a nonprofit organization. They ensure the availability of critical mental health services regardless of the ability to pay. I've so appreciated all of your interest and your attention today. As I look around the room, I just feel such a sense of gratitude and hope to be able to live and work in a community that's filled with so many supportive people. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly. That was wonderful. I'm Jane France. I'm the Development and Communications Director for Samaritan. But I stand before you today as a parent of an adult child living with a serious mental illness who has been hospitalized in a psych ward 5 times, bankrupted as a result, and committed to Chapter 51. I can tell you how important the work that Polly described to us today is. You do it on a daily basis for the mental health community, and it's just imperative that we keep it going. My husband actually started videotaping CIT training some 20 years ago when John Walschlager led the charge. Little did we know how vital it would become in our lives. We have experienced a police response when the officers were not trained, and it is dramatically different than one where the officers are trained to help someone de-escalate without force, without handcuffs. When our child goes sideways, we worry about them, but we worry as much for the community, for each one of you. So, Chief Olson, thank you again for the work you do. It brings me great comfort to know you are at the helm and that your officers are equipped with the right tools and the right knowledge to treat this population with respect and dignity. While Samaritan doesn't deal with a lot of serious mental illness, as most people living with one require a higher level of care, the family members are often traumatized by the impact of a loved one with an SMI. We need support. Also, as Chief Olson mentioned, the support network for these individuals is also vital, and our child lives with a strong support network, but many do not. So the Samaritan Fund that you are all here today to support is crucial to people without funds to be able to access the care that they need. Mental illness impacts all of us. Now I would like to introduce Kristen Manny, who is going to announce the nominees for the Selfless Samaritan Award.
Thank you, Jade. And I want to echo the thank yous that have come before I get started. First, I want to thank everyone in the room. I have a feeling you, like all of us here, have been touched in some way, shape, or form by the needs of mental illness and have a loved one that needed care at the right time. And your support for Samaritan, and particularly today for Samaritan Fund, is going to reach those people at a critical time, as Chief Polly said, at the right place, at the right time, with the right care, and it will save a life. So thank you for that. I also want to thank Chief Polly for being here and enlightening me on an entire body of work that I had no knowledge of, and know that I will go back in my life and share that with my sphere of influence so they know the great work that you're doing, and hopefully that is replicated in communities across the nation. So thank you. Now for the moment that we've been waiting for, and before we get started, I do want to ask all of the nominees to please stand for one great big round of applause. So, the Selfless Samaritan Award recognizes a selfless individual or group who has gone above and beyond in their dedication to their profession, their coworkers, neighbors, and community. COVID impacted everyone. For some people, it will take years to regain solid footing. But there have been many phenomenal acts of kindness and goodness in the past few years by so many deserving individuals and groups. You just saw many of them today stand up. So this year we had 7 nominees, and I would like to thank the committee who was given a thankless and extremely difficult task in reviewing these amazing nominations and selecting a finalist. So please stand when I call your name. Mary Badoon. Oh, she's here somewhere. Oh, way over there. Barb Betcher, Kathy Mahoney, Carla Rod, and Barb Raymaker. Thank you. So I had talked to Ro and described this as Aruba forgiveness, so please apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. And also, the food was delicious, but for any salad or asparagus remaining in my teeth. So, with that, I want to introduce Ideneo Medina, who is a leader, advocate, helper, artist, dreamer, doer, collaborator, and bridge builder, who believes it is important that we see ourselves, especially children, in a beautiful, powerful, and welcoming way. He is deeply involved in the community through arts and human service. His murals can be found around town, including at Houdini Plaza, the Children's Wisconsin's new state-of-the-art clinic, and here at the Grand Meridian. Ideneo is a case manager and mentor for the Boys and Girls Club of the Fox Valley's Scholars on Target to Achieve Results initiative, working to build equitable educational opportunities for Black scholars in the Fox Valley. He is one of the brilliant minds behind Summer of Service, where he provides opportunities for youth to paint murals. Ideneo was nominated by Kay Powers Carr. Pat Mahoney, who is graciously taking pictures right now. Pat volunteers as resident photographer with Samaritan, Habitat for Humanity, and his church. He is active in the NINA Rotary and Learning in Retirement. Dr. Pat shoots special events, staff and board members, and ordination photos. He has served as confirmation mentor, is active on mission trips, and has held many elected offices in his church and with boards and committees. As a retired veterinarian, Dr. Pat has shared his gentle, soothing, caring, and kind demeanor with pets and people alike. He was nominated by Jody Ism, Pastor David Frey, and Jane Franks. Carrie Merrill, Katie Dubois, Sarah Smith, and Becky Roble of the Western Racket and Fitness Club's Rock Steady Boxing program. Rock Steady Boxing helps people with Parkinson's disease improve their quality of life through non-contact boxing and fitness routines. The program has existed for 5 years and has 25 boxers who work with 4 certified coaches and numerous volunteers 5 times a week on dexterity, strength, core, mobility, balance, fall prevention, handwriting, and hitting heavy bags and speed bags. Rock Steady Boxing was nominated by Robert Mann. Shelley Knowlton volunteers at Pillars, where she single-handedly prepares and serves breakfast for 50 to 60 residents once a week. She coordinates and helps prepare and serve the monthly meal provided by her church. She also paints and prepares apartments for shelter residents. She volunteers for the local World Relief Organization, securing furniture and other donations for refugees to the Fox Valley. And during COVID, she pinch hit as an organist at her church for more than half of the services and helps coordinate the annual Christmas market to support local, regional, U.S., and worldwide charities. She's a trained volunteer at CASA, working on behalf of children in protective custody. Shelley was nominated by Chris Dans. Outagamie County Community Emergency Response Team, from here on out called CERT. The Outagamie County CERT Group is a volunteer group that responds to fire, police actions, and other emergencies to provide respite for emergency responders. This group of 45 volunteers who respond 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with safety gear for on-scene responders, protein and hydration supplies for firefighters, law enforcement, first responders, and all others who need support at critical incident scenes. They also bring clothing for victims of emergencies. The Outagamie County CERT was nominated by Danielle Lenz. The amazing people just keep coming. Kathy Peterson is active in her church, community, and apartment building. At church, she serves on the Altar Guild, works at the double portion feeding program, gives rides to the elderly and needy, takes meals to shut-ins and new moms, and is a chaplain to retired clergy. She chairs an outreach to students in Kenya and brings Kenyan students here to share their stories. As the mother of a special needs adult, she participates in activities that will benefit those with Down syndrome. In her apartment building, she helps a man with severe arthritis by taking him for daily walks. She finds out who will be alone on holidays and invites them to dinner. She delivers, plans, delivers and makes cookies to for shut-ins at Christmas and Easter. Kathy was nominated by Beverly Johnson. And finally, Rob Rosef, also known as Gumby, was diagnosed with kidney cancer 13 years ago and has been fighting cancer ever since. After the removal of his kidney, he asked his friends to get together for a game of golf to raise $250 for the Relay for Life. And in 2 weeks, a golf outing with 20-plus teams came together and raised $3,500. It turned into Gumby's Club for a Cure to help families affected by cancer in Manitowoc County. And to date, they've raised over $500,000. Rob was nominated by Sue DuPont. Congratulations to these 7 amazing, incredible nominees. I know your efforts have benefited countless, thousands of people. And I know it has inspired myself, and I'm sure it's inspired every single person in this room today. Wow, so glad I was not on the selection committee. But the selection committee has had an incredibly difficult task, but I'd like to congratulate this year's Selfless Samaritan Award winner, Kathy Peterson. Come on up, Kathy. Don't want to break this award, but I'll be very gentle. Probably without the and we'll hide. Thank you, Kathy. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Rose.
Since we started this awards, it always has been difficult. In the beginning, we didn't have the award. And then a few years into this program, this campaign, we had the Woman of Strength Award, and it was hard. There's so many people who are strong and making such a difference in the world, and then we got ourselves in even more trouble with the Selfless Samaritan Award. We started in the middle of COVID, identifying people who really were going above and beyond. And I was so surprised with the list of nominees. And, if we give an award to everybody, it's not that special anymore. But I hope all of you who were nominated here feel the warm embrace of every one of us here in the community for the beautiful work that each one of you does. So thank you. And for the record, Kathy was in the crew that wrote the first set of letters for the Silent Samaritan campaign in 2005. I was reminded of that as I learned that she was nominated and actually that she had been indicated for the award. Great journey for this campaign. So we still have a few minutes here. I don't know if I can just babble a little bit here so you can go and check if you have the final bid or not. I'm a bit disappointed, I'm going to be honest. There's some baskets that don't have any bids on them, but okay, we're going to put them for bidding on our website perhaps. But thank you for all of you for being here, for the donations you have made already. If you have been so moved to make a new donation or a first donation, we have envelopes on your program today. And rest assured that every dollar raised in this campaign will make a difference in someone's lives. Every dollar raised through the baskets, the auction items, will be contributing to make a life better someone is struggling with mental health in their own life or family life will be impacted by your generous donation. So, as I promised, as of today, our campaign has raised how much? That much! So thank you so much. So as you see there, we are quite a ways from our campaign goal. But you know, I know for sure that we have all the funds we need to meet our goals. They're in your wallets. Right? And our campaign goes through the end of the month. And you can make a gift to the Samaritan Fund any time in the year. So going home today, share with your friends, share with families what you heard here, what you experienced here, right? Help people understand that they can make an impact in people's lives by making an investment in this particular fund, right? And I know we will get much closer to that goal there, right? So thank you so much. Reaching the goal would allow us to assist 150 individuals with a full course of treatment, or about 8 sessions per person. We know we're going to be able to serve about half of that, but there are so many more people needing. All right. Oh, one more thing that I need to remember. 2 more things. Another plug-in for the silent auction. But then, we would love to hear from you about this event. You know, 18 years running a campaign and doing a luncheon begins to run a bit out of ideas. So if you would like, please to give us your feedback. There should be a card in your table where you can leave your email address. We don't have a card on your table. Okay, all right. For everybody who registered for this event, you will receive a survey on your email address. So you don't need to work for it, just answering the survey, right? Give us your idea. The other thing, I hope there's a space on that survey to give us suggestions of who you would like to hear speaking here. A particular speaker, or perhaps you would like to say, I would love to hear from one of your counselors. How is it to do this work? Or from one of the supporters, or perhaps one of your clients. We will listen to your suggestions, right? So please provide us your feedback. And the lovely aloe veras that you have on your tables with our mugs, they're for the taking, so you can fight amongst yourselves to figure out on your table who is going to take it, right? I know, we're not going to be doing that. But it's lovely that Mary plants those little aloe veras and that she makes this for us and that we can share with you our mugs and the new logo. If you're here last year, you see it's a different logo because with our new facility in which we moved last May, came a new brand, so that's our new face. And I am so happy that they chose the napkin colors to match our logo colors. It's all the details, right? So thank you so much for being here. I love having a chance to see each one of you. Make sure to check your baskets or your beads and carry it out and make the payment at the reception table. Thank you so much, and you have a great day.